A marriage of over 2 decades is unraveling due to hidden lies and trauma. Can love survive the weight of betrayal and the quest for healing? Join me on a journey of emotional discovery. The beginning of the end. I never thought I'd find myself in this position, but here I am, reflecting on a marriage that has been slowly unraveling for years. My wife and I have been together for over 2 decades, and I always believed our love could conquer anything. But as I look back, I realize I may have overlooked some glaring red flags. It all started with her childhood trauma, which cast a long, dark shadow over our relationship. I loved her deeply, but that love often felt like it was being tested. Her insecurities manifested in jealousy and emotional instability, leading to a cycle of hurtful outbursts and manipulation. When I caught her lying about something as trivial as a bachelorette party, it was like a jolt of electricity. I began to question everything. Did she really love me? Was I just a pawn in her emotional game? I had been so devoted, so willing to support her through therapy and family challenges, yet here I was, grappling with the realization that our relationship might not be as healthy as I had convinced myself it was. The echoes of her past were suffocating, and I was left feeling shattered and confused. As I navigated this emotional chaos, I decided it was time for a change. I insisted on a 2-month separation, convincing the kids that I was away for work and that my wife was simply visiting friends. It felt like a necessary step, albeit a painful one. I needed space to breathe, to think, to reflect on what we had become. My wife hated every second of this separation, and it broke my heart to see her in pain. But I knew we couldn't move forward without addressing the deep-rooted issues that had plagued us for so long. Part of the condition for reconciling was that she needed to take the lead in our marriage counseling. I hoped this would force her to confront her past and be honest about the emotional and physical abuse that had seeped into our lives. I thought we were turning a corner, but as I waited for her to share the complete truth about what had transpired during those years, I felt a growing sense of dread. What else was she hiding? Just as I began to feel a glimmer of hope, she dropped a bombshell that shattered everything. Part 2. Unraveling Truths. The day came when my wife asked me to join her for a session with her therapist for what she called a therapeutic disclosure. My stomach twisted in knots as I stepped into that office, not knowing what to expect. I had been seeking the truth, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to hear. As she sat there, tears streaming down her face, she recounted the events of her friend's bachelorette party. My heart raced as she detailed a night filled with strippers and wild behavior, something she had previously brushed off. I felt a rush of anger and betrayal, not because of the strippers themselves, but because of the lies she had told me for years. How could she treat me with such contempt and dishonesty? Then came the revelation about her friend, a personal trainer who had become entangled with a retired professional athlete. My wife had played the role of wingman, and as she described the situation, I couldn't help but feel like a pawn in her games. She claimed that nothing inappropriate happened, yet the way she spoke made it hard to believe her. The manipulation was palpable. The therapist praised her bravery for sharing this, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being manipulated. I left that session feeling raw and vulnerable, while my wife's best friend began texting me frantically, assuring me that my wife was telling the truth. But how could I trust anyone when the foundation of my marriage felt like quicksand? As if that wasn't enough, her friends rallied around her, confirming her story and attempting to soothe my fractured heart. I felt humiliated, like my life was a reality show gone wrong. I couldn't help but question everything, the love I had for her, the life we built together. I felt done. But amidst the chaos, a flicker of love still resided in me. I couldn't just walk away, especially not from the kids who would be affected by our turmoil. So I took a step back, seeking legal advice while trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for our family. Yet the emotional turmoil was far from over. Part 3. A descent into confusion. The months following the disclosure were tumultuous, to say the least. I had hoped that the truth would set us free, but it only seemed to deepen my confusion. My wife was desperate to prove her love and commitment, and she worked tirelessly to repair the damage. She wrote long messages, detailed timelines, and insisted on attending therapy sessions together. I felt the weight of her pain and history tugging at my heartstrings, but I was still grappling with my own hurt. One night, as I lay in the basement of our home, I could hear her moving around, restless and tormented by her nightmares. She came downstairs, seeking comfort, and I found myself torn between wanting to hold her close and needing to maintain my distance. It was a confusing dance of emotions. I had wanted a separation to gain clarity, yet here we were, sharing moments of intimacy that blurred the lines we had tried to draw. I had conversations with my sister, who had always been my confidant. She encouraged me to focus on the positives in my life, especially our kids. The warmth of our family still flickered in the background, but the storm between my wife and me loomed large. Every time I felt like I was making progress, another wave of confusion and betrayal would crash over me. I began to wonder if I was simply a simp, unable to walk away from the love I had for her, no matter how toxic it had become. Then came the day I received a message from my wife's best friend, Sarah. She wanted to meet up, to apologize and discuss everything that had transpired. I felt a mix of anger and curiosity. Could she shed light on the situation, or was this another attempt to manipulate me? Part 4. Confrontation and clarity. When I met Sarah, I was braced for confrontation, but what I found was a woman who genuinely seemed remorseful. She recounted her own experiences and how her actions had contributed to the mess we were in. She painted a picture of my wife as a woman caught in a web of peer pressure and manipulation, where she felt compelled to support her friend rather than prioritize our marriage. Sarah claimed that my wife had never wanted to be part of the bachelorette party's antics, but she was trying to shield her friend from making poor decisions. It was a narrative that stirred something within me. Could it be that my wife was simply a product of her circumstances? Yet, as I listened, I couldn't help but wonder how many times I had chosen to overlook her behavior in the name of love. Every time I thought we were making progress, I felt like I was back at square one, grappling with the same painful questions. I still loved her, but the resentment and anger were hard to shake. As Sarah continued to speak, I realized that my wife's past trauma was intertwined with her present behavior. It was a tangled web that didn't excuse her actions, but gave me a glimpse into the deeper struggles she faced. But could I forgive her? Could I move past the hurt and betrayal? I could feel the walls I had built around my heart beginning to crack. And just when I thought I might find some clarity, I received a phone call from Laura, my wife's personal trainer friend. She had a story of her own to share, one that would further complicate everything I thought I knew. Part 5. The weight of the past. Laura's call was unexpected, and I hesitated before answering. The last thing I wanted was more drama, but her urgency was palpable. She claimed to have insights that could change everything for me, and I found myself reluctantly intrigued. As she spoke, she painted a picture of a time when my wife was deeply affected by her own trauma. She told me about how my wife had been manipulated into situations that made her uncomfortable, all in the name of friendship. Laura claimed that my wife had never truly wanted to engage with the athlete's entourage, but felt the pressure to conform. It was a story of vulnerability, and I began to understand how her past shaped her present. Yet, even as I listened, I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. Why had these truths been hidden from me for so long? Was my wife really as innocent as Laura claimed, or was this all part of a narrative designed to absolve her of responsibility? I was caught in a storm of emotions, feeling for my wife, but also feeling like a fool for allowing myself to be manipulated. The hurt from her lies and the emotional chaos was still fresh, and I struggled to reconcile the love I felt with the betrayal I had endured. But then Laura offered me something I never expected, a chance to speak with the retired athlete himself. She insisted he would corroborate my wife's story and paint her in a more favorable light. I was taken aback. Did I really want to hear from someone who had been part of this tangled web of deception? Or would it just add another layer of pain? Part 6. Finding my way forward. At that moment, I realized I was at a crossroads. I had been trying so hard to navigate my wife's trauma and our own tumultuous history, but I needed to think about my own healing too. I declined Laura's offer to speak with the athlete, knowing that I had to focus on what mattered most, my own well-being and that of my kids. The journey ahead was
uncertain, and the emotional scars ran deep. My wife had worked hard to confront her past, and had even taken a polygraph to prove her honesty regarding the allegations surrounding her. While I appreciated her efforts, the scars of betrayal were still raw. I began to lean on my sister once again, seeking her guidance and support. She reminded me that two things could be true at once. My wife could be a survivor of trauma, and also someone who had hurt me deeply. I found solace in that understanding. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it allowed me to see the complexity of our situation with clearer eyes. As I navigated this in-house separation, I began to prioritize my emotional health. I sought therapy for myself, focusing on processing my feelings and finding a way to heal. My kids were my anchor, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose in ensuring their well-being. They needed stability, and I was determined to provide that, even amidst the chaos. In the end, I realized that love doesn't always look like staying together. Sometimes it means recognizing when to let go. My wife and I may have shared a beautiful history, but the future remained uncertain. I had to choose my path forward, one that honored both my love for her and the need for my own emotional safety. As I embraced this journey of healing, I held on to the hope that one day I would find peace, either together or apart. Love is a complex tapestry, and I was ready to weave my own story anew.